Hello and good evening to Galactic Terrors for November 2023, the online reading series that scours the known universe for scary stories, strange tales, weird horror, and all sorts of literary oddities from the most imaginative authors writing in a variety of fascinating genres. I am Jim Chambers, and with me tonight is co-host Carol Gyzander.
Hello, everybody. And I think there's always at least three people in the audience who say literary oddities. That's me, right?
Yep, in the audience, behind the scenes, on the show, probably all around us.
And probably you and me as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How are you, Carol?
Good. We survived Halloween. Yay.
We did. We did. I hope people didn't have too much excess candy left over. I know we got quite a few trick-or-treaters and went through a nice supply of sweets.
Go ahead. Ask me how many trick-or-treaters I got from my bag of 60 pieces of candy. Ask
How
me.
many trick-or-treaters did you get for your bag of 60 pieces of candy?
Zero. Do not ask me how many of those I ate myself.
All right. I'll be nice.
Yeah,
It could have been worse. You could have gotten the jumbo 150 pack. So
that's true. That's true.
that's it.
Yeah.
But thank you for joining us tonight. We have a great lineup of readers. Reading with us tonight will be Rebecca Cuthbert and Rachel A. BRUNE. And joining us in a special recorded session is GREG CHAPMAN, one of our Australian dark writer friends. Due to time zone differences, it was difficult to get Greg on live, but we were able to do a special recording with him that we're going to share tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. He may be watching, which is fun, but he may not be awake enough to read and chat with us. So yeah, that
Exactly.
would be tough. Yeah. Cool. So all right. Well, following up on our Halloween thought, did you know that there's 350 days until Halloween 2024?
Is that all?
That's all. I
That's
think we
less,
better get started planning.
that's less than a year.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think it's a long wait for Halloween, but just a reminder to everyone who's enjoying Galactic Terrors, it's not that long a wait between sessions of our online reading series. We come on every second Thursday of the month. This month, of course, is an exception. We had to move it to the third Thursday of the month due to some irreconcilable scheduling conflicts that both Carol and I had. And so here we are just a week before Thanksgiving on the third Thursday of the month. But we'll be back on December 14th, I think it is, for the official second Thursday. And if you don't want to have to think about all of that, you can click subscribe below to follow future Galactic Terrors transmissions. Of course, we'd love you to like our YouTube channel, our YouTube video, and all of that stuff. As our good friend Nicholas Dyack often puts in the comments, mash that like button, please.
For those on YouTube, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can join the Galactic Terrors newsletter, and I'll be putting this link in the chat in a little bit so that you can go ahead and sign up. And Carol, do we spam people with Galactic Terrors newsletter news?
Let me think. No, we do not. Since I make the newsletter, we are not sending out excess copies of anything. Well, basically what we do is we send out one copy with all the information about our authors and the links, and we send another copy very close to the event to sort of remind you that it's there. So it's nothing exceptional.
Thank you, Nicholas. Much appreciated.
Yeah. It's always good to have Nick on the ball here.
Yeah. But I guess, so Halloween has passed, and it's going to be at least a few weeks before the next Galactic Terrors. But we've got this coming up next Thursday, this Thanksgiving holiday. And Carol, I think you were doing some deep research on Thanksgiving, right? And
yeah, we always think of Halloween as being the really important thing for horror folks, but it's also kind of important to think about what could happen when you get a few turkeys together. What do you think, Jim?
Well, let's see what you've uncovered with your research. You can take us through this and explain these various traditions.
Yes. Well, if you have a Thanksgiving turkey or you're doing turkeys in space, there is always the problem with Alien. I think we've seen what happens with this guy. Once he comes out, oh, there's no stopping him,
No one can hear you scream in a turkey.
Yes.
I guess this is if your preference is for cosmic horror.
Yes, indeed. This is Chthurki. Yes, yeah,
Turkey.
that's what it is. Yeah. So we've got our Cthulhu in there with our turkey and our crab. So.
Well, and I get the distinct feeling that whoever concocted this monstrosity, it actually went ahead and ate it afterwards.
Probably, yes.
All right. Now
Yes.
this one, I'm not sure about this recipe. This seems like it might be for people with a very selective palate.
Yes. Well, this is what the turkeys eat for Thanksgiving. See, that's the difference. Yeah. Yeah.
Got it.
So,
And I like that they drink wine too.
well, red wine with, that's appropriate. So,
All right. Shall I continue, or do you have more for us?
I think we had something rather scary when they get in a mass,
Let's see. Is that?
Yes, yes. Run, run.
It's like zombies. They're really only dangerous when they outnumber you.
That's true. Oh well.
Oops.
Yeah, you may think you're fast, but oh well.
All right. And then I think
Let's
see what this one is.
Oh, that's something I have. Yeah, that's
event.
something I have coming up in December. There's another reading series that has an event. Yeah, sorry, that kind of slipped in there. Well, perhaps we'll talk about that later. Yeah, and this is the ones who really want to celebrate the holiday well. This is what the wild turkeys do. So yeah.
Looks like a fun Thanksgiving.
Yeah, for somebody. And I just want to thank the Fangoria website because they had a lot of those pictures up there. So thanks Fangoria for putting those available for us to take a peek at.
Thank you. And I think Lara Frater pretty much sums up what we've just witnessed. Turkey.
Yes.
All right. And then I think we also wanted to just give a quick plug for a feature going on the HWA's website this month, horror.org, in honor of Veterans Day.
Yes. There's been quite a few. There's a profile every day of one of our veterans in the spotlight at horror.org. And so it's a great way to get to know some of our horror writers friends who are veterans.
Yeah, and so they're all HWA members who have been in the armed services, correct, and are now writing horror.
Yeah.
Some of them, I think, are probably drawing on their experiences, and some of them are trying to go in different directions. But some really interesting posts and insights there about horror writing and other related things in general.
And I think that's something we may wind up talking with Rachel about when we get to her. So that'll be cool.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. All right. So shall we go ahead and jump into our readings for tonight?
I think that's an excellent idea. Get us started, Jim.
Wonderful. First up tonight is Rebecca Cuthbert. Rebecca writes dark fiction and poetry. Her debut collection, In Memory of Exoskeletons, is out now from Alien Buddha Press. Look for Self-Made Monsters, a hybrid collection in fall of 2024, also from Alien Buddha Press. Her poem, Still Love, has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize and a Best of the Net Award. And I think that was published in Nocturne Magazine. Recent publications include No Rest Nor Relief for You With Me Dead in Shakespeare Unleashed from Monstrous Books and Crystal Lake Publishing. The Quilting Circle of Bygone Gardens, published in Soul Scream Antholozine, and Falling to Pieces, published in We're Here, Best Queer Speculative Fiction 2022. Her story Rockabye will be included in Cemetery Dance's Dread Anthology. More information, visit REBECCACUTHBERT.com. Let's welcome Rebecca.
Hi everyone, Jim and Carol, thanks for that introduction. I'm going to read a couple of poems to start out with from this collection, In Memory of Exoskeletons. This is Bargain. Feeling deciduous, brackish woods bracken, and fever closing in, you search for breadcrumbs I promised to leave, weighting your apron with pebbles instead. It hangs from your hips like the burden you are. Gravity has never owed anyone favors. 3 owl hoots echo. They're less like who and more like you. Didn't you ask me who's to blame? Didn't I send you for rye meal and ashes? Watch for fault lines. My jacket is lined with mouse hair. There's blackbird pie in the airing cupboard, a heap of small sneakers by the backyard door. Can you smell the smoke on the stirring breeze? Inhale like you mean it. Call the dogs, bring the torches. When my eyelids are packed with sand, my throat stopped up, our secrets buried in a brown glass bottle beneath these twisted roots, whom will you call on to save you, to boil you, to know your quietest name? Up next is a poem called Bloodthirsty. Hope is not a thing with feathers, but scales and plates, a thick carapace. Not easily plucked, not fragile enough, armor too solid and heavy to fly. Hope trudges steady, each footfall a statement, a clock's stubborn tick. Sinking in bracken, it breathes underwater, walks straight as a stick across ocean floors. Hope, not a beacon, no spark in the darkness, nothing so bright to give it away. It waits in deep shadow, dissolving in moonlight, watching, patient, counting your days. Then, when it's time, its bulk will creep forward, hulk itself toward you, appear through the mist to sniff your despair, so close that it sees how your pulse kicks your wrist. Hope will not revive you. It won't sit beside you, holding your hand with its clubbed little foot. Instead, it will slash at you, long forked tongue lashing you, bruising your skin like a wind-fallen peach. Pain, it will say, through lips curled like ash, is how I remind you I'm always behind you, teeth sharp and ready to punish delay. Stay, and I'll show you the hell that waits for you here with my rage if you don't get away. Thanks. Up next, I would like to read a poem from my upcoming collection, Self-Made Monsters, which is also by Alien Buddha Press, and that will be coming out in October of 24. This poem is called Lake Erie Omen, and it was first published in the Siren's Call e-zine over this past summer. You call me an omen, good or ill, but I have a name and it's not Bessie. That tourist's barb, that cheap shot glass logo. But how could you landlocked brutes understand? You, with your broken scavenger's tongue, mine, deep-toned chantings from nightmares long since dreamt. Do you know what I've done with your zebra muscles? Did you think their weak shells could colonize me too? Foolish men. I wear them like jewels, like the crown I've surely earned. For who else would spend eons ruling over this lake bed, doling out petty fates for lesser monsters like you? Don't think I do not mark you, always, standing on the shore, pretending not to see me. Stupid driftwood doesn't blink. You know the lore. To spy me with dry feet on sand foretells a death by water. It may be a drowning or something with more flair. Your neck caught in a coil of rope, a slippery deck and a step misplaced. But if, as they say, you're lost in a storm, flimsy boat tossed like litter, like the floating trash you are, I might afford you pity. Me, your queen of scale and bone. Now I have a little more time, so I would like to read microfiction from Self-Made Monster, so that's also the upcoming collection. This is called Dare You, and it was first published in Diet Milk Magazine's Gothic Advent calendar in the bleak midwinter. So it is seasonal because it takes place in winter. They had told Jade that accepting the dare would make her cool, that it would impress them. So she said yes, and that's how she found herself after dark on the Friday night that marked the official start of winter break, treading the dusty floorboards of the abandoned Slater house on the far side of town. Jade's town, but not always. She and her mom had moved there just 3 weeks before. The junior high was smaller than her old one, with cliques established since elementary school. But this friend group, Kaylee and Beth and Margot and Frankie and Tim, were going to let her join, as long as she could prove herself first. It was as cold inside the Slater house as it was out. Most of the windows were broken and frosty air moaned in through the empty casements. Jade's snow boots were too heavy for tiptoeing, but she tried to walk carefully. Some of the floorboards were swollen with rainwater, and here and there they'd rotted through. Her friends had let her bring a flashlight, but not her phone. No calling for your mommy, wuss, Margot had said, and the others laughed. Jade hadn't wanted to hand over her phone, but what could she do? She'd already accepted the dare. She made it across the space that was probably a dining room, then through the living room, wallpaper hanging down from the walls like shed skin, twin chandeliers dangling low at strange angles, and to the base of the wooden staircase. Now she had to go up. She tested the first step. It creaked but held. She heard giggling outside. The others probably thought she wouldn't do it, that she wouldn't climb the stairs to the second story and go to the master bedroom where old man Slater had killed his wife and then himself, then lean out the window and wave. Jade knew what she'd say when she did it. She'd yell down, "Take that, chicken shits," and she'd laugh at them, then swagger back outside and tell them it was no big deal. She'd even practiced her shrug. She said it to herself quietly as her other foot left the floor for the second step. No big deal. Another step, creak. No big deal. The beam of her flashlight picked out cobwebs, shards of glass, a pile of newspapers on the landing in front of her where the stairs turned. She took another step and then another. She was doing it. She reached the landing when the pile of newspapers moved. A rat, the size of her snow boots, skittered out from the yellowed pages, its high-pitched squeal deafening in that echoey space. Jade jumped back. Her boot went through the warped wooden step where she landed. She sunk to her bleeding thigh, leg dangling in the empty space below the staircase. She screamed, dropped her flashlight to scrabble for the rail, but she wasn't fast enough. The weight of her body was too much for the ruined steps. She fell. On the way down, she cracked her chin. The impact snapped her head back, gashing it open on the splintered wood. Her heavy winter coat didn't do much to cushion her landing on the packed earth of the basement floor. She wanted to call for help, but her voice didn't work. She didn't know if her eyes were open or closed. She couldn't hear the wind anymore. She couldn't hear the others talking or laughing either. She couldn't have known that they were already gone, that they'd dropped her phone and run away as soon as her scream had ripped from the guts of that dilapidated old house. Jade felt very tired, but not very cold. She spent her last conscious moment wondering if she'd get another chance at the dare, or if this was it, if she'd blown her only shot at having friends. Then, quiet as the snow falling outside, she drifted off. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your words. I like seeing a selection of things like that.
Thanks.
That's terrific. Okay, I just want to share that this is my novella, which is about Bessie, the Lake Erie monster. Like your third
That is
piece.
wild.
Yes.
Ow.
That's very fun.
And to
So,
folks
no.
listening, Lake Erie is like half a block behind me. So I live in Western New York, so we walk along the lake all the time. So we grew up with Tales of Bessie.
Yes, indeed. And I grew up in the Buffalo area, but I left at the end of 5th grade. We wound up moving to New Jersey. So, and I've sort of been here pretty much ever since. So yeah, that's fun. But and that's one of the neat things. You're a member of our New York chapter of HWA, and many folks are focused here in the New York City area. But one of the nicest things about the pandemic is that we were able to go online for a lot of our meetings and reach out and get to know more of the people in the New York State area. So I'm so terrifically pleased to have you, more active with the chapter.
Grateful. Like a little stray cat that you all adopted.
No. Well, also, we'll talk about it in the future, but World Fantasy Con will be up there next year. So I look forward to getting up there and seeing you up there in person again. So,
awesome.
Yeah. So I want to start. This is actually a pretty good question that Nicholas put in for us. Oh, wait, I went too far. He was wondering about the different types of things you like to do. And he's asking, are you more into the shorter forms of writing, like poetry and microfiction, etc., or do you do drabbles at all? If not, you'd rock at them.
Thank you, Nicholas. I do a little bit of everything. I am working on a novel. I've got a story collection manuscript out for consideration now. I've got a novella manuscript out for consideration. I do short stories, I do poetry, and I do microfiction. And I had a drabble up at Hungry Shadow Press's Deadly Drabble Tuesday called The Reservoir. Ooh. And I also had a few drabbles in the Black Hair Nom Nom Halloween collection last year. So I do enjoy a drabble.
There are so many terrific titles associated with you and your work. All those things you just mentioned, plus all of your poems and stories. They have these really cool, like really long ones, the clean your room. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's terrific. So what do you do when you're starting a piece? How do you know if it's going to be a poem or a story? How do you know how long it's going to be?
So I am a proponent of the entire writing process that I don't just really kind of jump into things, that I do think about first what this might be. But I enjoy that poems and drabbles are like a little break between the longer work. So sometimes I do set out intending to write something really short form, just to like give myself a different task for a little bit. And it kind of refreshes me, and then I can go back to the longer work. And it's fun because in sort of a short time, you have this thing that's like done. Like you can write it and revise it and polish it.
Check it off.
Yeah, it feels good. So
yeah.
So sometimes I do know ahead of time what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. And it's almost like a little dish of sorbet then. It could be a palate cleanser between things. Oh, that's very cool. So one of the things that I love is the type of imagery that you used in those first several pieces, or just that very first line, feeling deciduous. It's like, holy cow. Okay. Yeah, I get that right away. That just like plants us somewhere, which I thought was really neat and very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then the image of hope with scale, it's not, it's with scales and plates. It's not the fluffy thing anymore.
Yeah. I was thinking one day about how, hope is just like such a bastard, that it like keeps you going. Cause it'd be so much easier to quit, right? Like it would always be easier to quit. And, Gabino Iglesias put up a tweet, and the tweet was like, no one's making you do this, essentially. And it made me laugh. And it just made me think about how, like, what is making me do this then? And it's hope that, after 10 rejections, you'll get an acceptance. Or hope that, this revision is going to be like the revision, that fixes all the problems with a story or with a manuscript. And so then I just kind of got a kick out of picturing hope as like a little gremlin coming after you with sharp teeth. So.
That's cool. Oh, wait, no, we just have to share this. Teal says, I love that. Sometimes I know ahead of time what I'm doing. Yeah.
Sometimes, Teal, not all the time.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Okay, we have a question from another teacher. Chris wants to know, do your students know you're reading your work on Galactic Terrors tonight? If not, will the link be part of an upcoming assignment? how
Some of
does
my
that work?
students, some of my students do, because some of them are very sweet and follow me on social media.
Ooh.
And so some of them might, and I do not keep my writer self a secret from them. So all of my links are at the bottom of all my emails to them. And I think that sharing what I do, especially like the struggles with what I do, lends some authenticity to teaching. And it kind of shows them that, like, I'm not just telling you to do this, I'm doing this myself. So here,
Yes.
let's talk about it.
So yeah, and be brave and put yourself out there. Yeah, that's cool. Now remind me again what grade level, what age level you're teaching. I don't remember.
I teach college classes.
Okay.
I teach creative writing classes, and it's a lot of freshmen, but some upperclassmen as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's much more cool. The very first thing I was writing, my youngest was in high school, and I had a Girl Scout troop. They were in like 10th grade, and I thought, I'm gonna just fade to black on this time when the characters are going to bed, because I don't need to write this and have them read that, But it's a little different maybe when it's your kid that's doing the reading. So yeah, probably. Yeah, that's cool. So what do you think about writing poetry as well as prose? I was mentioning the wonderful images that you have and the really nice way that you captured some words and interesting turns of phrase. And you also did some really cool imagery in that house scene, with the wallpaper peeling off and all. Does one inform the other for you? Did I stand alone? How does it work in your head?
They definitely work together. And as a recommendation, I would say to everybody, like, even if you think you're a fiction writer, like, write some poetry. Like, don't be afraid to write some poetry, because it helps, like microfiction helps, because it makes you really focus on every single word you're using, because in a poem or in a piece of microfiction, every word counts. And if you're writing something longer, every word should still count. It's just we don't think about it as much, but
Okay.
Like, my classes talk a lot. We were just talking this week about the importance of the sentence. Like, on a sentence level, it has to be good, because if you have a book made up of bad sentences, you're going to have a bad book. You have to get it right at the very bottom line, And so making yourself like hyper focus on the way words work, the images work together, it's really good practice for your prose.
Okay. And they may forgive one sentence out of many, but that you don't want to be tempting that. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to think, what does it take for a reader to put the book down?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's important. Well, that's very cool. Well, I look forward to having you come back at the end and tell us a little bit more about the new one that's coming up, because I liked hearing that little piece of it. So we'll ask you to come back with Rachel. We'll chat a little bit more at the end.
All right.
So thank you.
So much.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Glad to have you share your words. What I'd like to do is introduce our video interview that Jim did with GREG CHAPMAN. Bram Stoker Award and multiple Australian Shadows Award nominee GREG CHAPMAN is a horror author and artist based in Queensland, Australia. GREG is the author of several novels, novellas, and short stories, including his award-nominated debut novel, Hollow House, and collections, Vaudeville and Other Nightmares, and This Sublime Darkness and Other Dark Stories. He's also a horror artist and designer, and his first graphic novel, Witch Hunts, A Graphic History of the Burning Times from McFarlane and Company, written by authors Rocky Wood and Lisa Morton, won the Superior Achievement in a Graphic Novel category at the Bram Stoker Awards in 2013. He was also the president of the Australasian Horror Writers Association from 2017 to 2020. You can find more about GREG CHAPMAN at darkscribe.com, and we'll add that link in the chat in a little bit. And here's our video interview of Jim with GREG.
I'm just going to read a story from my new collection, Midnight Masquerade. This story is called Happy Days, and it's basically about a clown for hire who, has a pretty bad day. So I'll dive right in. Harvey Dutton sat in front of the bathroom mirror and put on his true face. First, he applied a thick white grease paint with his fingers, spreading it evenly. Black stubble poked through the white, but he doubted the kids would mind or even notice. Next, he applied blue mascara around his left eye and green around his right. Harvey always enjoyed the feel of the brush on his eyelids, smooth and soft. Then he reached for his red lipstick pen. He drew a large, exaggerated smile on his lips, circling his entire mouth and stretching the line up to his cheeks. He smiled to make sure the shape was just so. Then finally he put on his fuzzy rainbow wig. The sight of it and his great big red smile filled him with a deep warmth because he was no longer Harvey Dutton. He was Giggles the Clown. Once his face was touch dry, Harvey undressed down to his Y-fronts and took his Giggles costume off the hook on the back of the bathroom door. The suit was a custom-made three-piece, which cost him $750 way back when. It was patterned with rainbow pinstripes and embellished with oversized gold buttons. Harvey slipped the trousers out of the laundromat bag and pulled them on, careful to ensure the pinstripes lined up perfectly down the length of his legs. The kids would notice if they weren't. He was about to put on his shirt when 3 soft knocks resounded from the other side of the door. Harvey? It was his wife, Louisa. Harvey replaced his shirt on its hanger and opened the door. She seemed to recoil when she beheld him partially dressed in his clown costume, which Harvey found odd. "Hey, hun," Harvey said. "I'm just getting ready. You can have the shower soon." Louisa looked to the floor and then back to him, but wouldn't look him in the eye. "Everything okay?" Harvey asked. Her throat bobbed up and down. I need to talk to you," she said. Harvey smirked, his big red mouth lifting at one corner. "Oh, sure, what is it?" Louisa scratched the back of her sandy blonde head. "I meant to talk to you last night." Harvey sensed something troubled his wife. He reached for her, but she took a step back. "Hey, what's wrong?" His red lips drooped. She shook her head. I can't do this." "It's okay. We can talk later if you—" Her head shake became more vigorous. No, I mean this." She waved her hands at him. Harvey shifted from one foot to the other. "What do you mean?" She met his gaze. "How much longer are you going to keep doing this?" His red mouth hung open like he was a dead fish. "Sorry?" "You've been doing this for almost 10 years, Harvey." "Yeah?" She folded her arms. Harvey had never seen his wife act so defensive before. "Before we married, 5 years ago, you told me this clown act wasn't forever," Louisa said. "That you'd find a more serious job, try and get back into theatre." He moved towards her again, but now she grimaced, lip peeled back in a sneer. "Lou, where is this coming from? You've never said anything about this before." She ran a hand through her hair. "I've put up with this for a long time. Too long." "Put up with?" Harvey's painted smile contradicted his confusion. "Lou, this is my job, my business. I was doing this when we met. You know how much it means to me." "But it's not paying the bills, is it, Harvey? We've been struggling for years to pay off this house. When's the last time we went out to a restaurant?" The way she said his name, practically spitting it out. There was resentment there. Tears threatened to ruin Harvey's makeup, but he told himself he wouldn't cry. I know things have been hard, but the boys and we have something special with Happy Days. It's a hell of a lot more rewarding than the theatre. We make enough to get by. Besides, I don't do it for the money, Lou. I do it for those little kids, the ones in the cancer wards who need some joy in their lives. Louisa pointed at her chest. "I need some joy in my life too, Harvey. You get up every morning and put on this facade, and you don't even consider how that might make me feel. Well, I'll tell you, it makes me embarrassed." Trickles of sweat ran down Harvey's bare back. You're ashamed of me?" Louisa didn't say that, but her eyes said it all, until she did voice it. "Do you know what it's like for me to tell people what you do for a living?" Harvey's red smile trembled. "So what? I should just give it all up then? Become a mechanic or something? Do you really want me to give up what makes me happy?" She walked away from him, her voice trailing behind her. "You do whatever you want, Harvey. I don't care anymore." The other clowns glared at Harvey as he walked through the doors of Happy Days, Clowns for Hire. Pogo, Squeaks, and Zany all regarded him with indifference instead of their usual broad red smiles, and he wondered why he'd bothered to go to work at all. Louisa's revelations left him feeling like he'd been torn right down the middle, like she'd reached into his chest, plucked out his heart, and flushed it down the toilet. Now, as he looked into the faces of his fellow clowns, his only friends, he had a bad feeling they wouldn't care, even if he told them. "Where the hell have you been?" Pogo said, his white jowls trembling beneath his big red clown nose. Harvey put his lunch inside his locker. "Sorry, guys, there's been some trouble at home." Pogo jabbed a chubby finger in his direction. He was shirtless, his stomach barely contained by his sequined suspenders. "Well, I had to cover your hour at the cancer ward, which meant I missed the birthday party already booked across town. The parents were livid and demanded a refund, which means we're $500 short." Harvey sighed. "Oh, man, I'm sorry, Red. A lump formed in his throat. "Louisa told me she's leaving me." Pogo turned to Squeaks and Zany, and Harvey noticed the three clowns shared the same pitiful look. "Yeah? Well, that's too bad," Squeak said, cigarette dangling from the corner of his red lips. "Still, you should have called and let us know you would be late." He took off his curly blue wig and tossed it in his locker. Harvey shook his head in disbelief. "Wow, you guys are real pals, aren't you? I bare my soul and tell you my wife is leaving me, and you're all just, 'Oh, that's too bad, Harvey.'" Squeak slammed his locker door, making Harvey jump. "Makes sense. You're not much of a clown, and an even worse business partner, so I doubt you're much of a husband." Harvey's face burned beneath the pasty grease paint. "What the hell did you just say, Barry?" Pogo pushed Harvey back on his heels. "You know you've been letting this place down for years, Harvey," he said. "We're always having to pick up your slack." Zany chimed in, stepping forward in his oversized clown shoes. "You never do kids' parties," Squeaks added. "We always have to do them because all you want to do is the cancer kids." "Those kids love me, and don't forget I'm the one who started this business and brought you in." Harvey poked Pogo in the chest. "Love you?" Pogo laughed out loud. "You're just a fucking clown, not some thespian. Do you think your dancing and half-assed singing is going to make those poor kids feel better? If I had cancer and had to listen to you, I'd be begging for the cancer to take me." Harvey's right fist connected with Pogo's big red nose. It happened so fast that Harvey didn't realize what he'd done until he saw the blood on his knuckles. "Oh, shit," was all he could say as he watched Pogo's large frame crash into one of the chairs. Moments later, Squeaks and Zany launched themselves at Harvey, throwing wild punches of their own. Pain seared along Harvey's ribs and kidneys. A fist almost dislocated his jaw. Then Pogo was on his feet, screaming, and he came charging in to knock Harvey to the floor. He tasted blood mixed with grease paint. He coiled into the fetal position, but the clowns were in a frenzy, tearing at Harvey's pinstriped suit with their bare hands. "You're fucking mincemeat," Pogo said. Harvey was limp as they picked him up and hauled him towards the front doors. He felt a rush of air and then the shattering of plate glass. He hit the pavement outside, his chin smacking against the concrete so hard he swallowed a tooth. Pieces of glass scraped his skin. Through the haze of threatening unconsciousness, Harvey summoned the strength to get on his knees and then stand. He staggered towards his car as Pogo's voice rang out behind him. "I'm calling the cops on your ass, Harvey. Do you hear me? You're fucked." I think I'll stop there. You'll have to read the rest of the story. Yeah, so that story is pretty hard to take, I guess, for some. But I guess the inspiration for that one was basically it gets more into it in the story, but it was all about black balloons and thinking about what clowns for hire do with those black balloons, because I guess it's not something that kids would really like. They'd prefer to see the coloured ones, but as it gets more into the story, you get a taste of what the black balloons are about.
Thank you, Greg.
I probably should have prefaced that there was some language in that story, so apologies for anyone who may be uncomfortable with that.
Oh, thank you. I think our usual audience probably won't be too shocked.
That's
We've had some colorful language on the show at times, but
okay.
I for one am eager to see where the story goes. That's off to a pretty bleak start, and I'm just so right off the bat, what I'm wondering is, what is it about clowns and horror? Clowns have become such a horror motif, sort of a staple of the genre, and you're doing something with it in this story that sounds different than what I've seen in other stories.
Yeah, I think with all of my stories that I've ever written, I've always wanted it to be as human as possible. And people have bad days. Everybody has bad days. And clowns, if you're a clown for hire, I'm sure there's plenty of them out there that have had bad days but still have to put on this happy face. But I really, people are imperfect, and people have flaws, people have issues and problems, and I think I really wanted to do something that humanized these clowns and not make them an evil spirit or a monster. And I just thought, why not just have a clown that has a really bad day, and just see where it goes from there. But as I said too, the original idea was the black balloons, and it was just a thought that popped into my head one day about what do the clowns do with these little black balloons. And as you get more into the story, you discover exactly what he does with them. So
yeah, it's intriguing, and it sounds like it's not going to be pleasant.
No, it certainly isn't. It certainly gets worse, and if you think it's pretty bad so far, you're going to be quite surprised.
Okay, and this is in. Just give us the name of the collection again.
It's Midnight Masquerade, so it's coming out. I guess when this episode airs, it'll be already out, but it's coming out on Halloween.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so there's 2 previously published novellas in it, but then Happy Days and 4 other stories, brand new, so to the collection.
Terrific. And I mean, I think most people who are familiar with your writing know that you are also an artist, very accomplished graphic artist, illustrator, cover artist. Have you ever drawn evil clowns? I'm thinking of all of your art that I've seen, and I can't remember one.
Yeah, I have drawn a few.
Okay.
Yeah, I've done a few. I think I did one for another author's cover once. But yeah, I draw them, probably not as often as other things, but there was one just a few months ago. I just was playing around in Procreate, which is a digital art app, which I've fallen in love with. And I just happened to draw a clown face, which was quite scary. And whenever I do draw them, I generally get quite a good response. So maybe I should be drawing more of them.
Now, does your art influence your writing, or does your writing influence your art? How is that connection for you? Are they two separate channels, or do you find that you might draw something and then think this would make a great story?
They sort of run parallel, and I also see the art as a bit of therapy. Yeah, I guess if I don't go through a day without drawing something, I sort of feel a bit not lost, but disconnected, I guess, from myself. Drawing came first for me when I was a kid. I was always drawing superheroes or trying to draw my own comic books. And the writing came much later when I was in my sort of early 20s. But I found that when I'm writing, I in my head, I can sort of see it all playing out almost like a film. and I guess that must be the visual aspect of my brain ticking in, so they sort of complement each other. But the art is more of a, I'll just sit down and draw something because I just feel like disconnecting, a bit like reading. I do that as well. So, yeah.
So it's interesting. I've met over the years a lot of horror readers, writers, artists, fans, whose first introduction to the horror genre was through comics. I think a lot of horror comics, and I know, there were tons of horror comics available when I was growing up, but I know that the Australian publishing market's very different. Did you have horror comics in Australia that were uniquely Australian, or
no?
not?
It was mainly just superhero comics in Australia, and that was, I guess, growing up in a Catholic household, it was horror comics probably weren't readily acceptable in the house, and so I didn't really see anything like EC comics until I reached adulthood. So mainly I was allowed to have superhero comics, and that was about it. But having said that, a lot of the villains in superhero comics had sort of monster or horror aspects to them, not overly so, but they certainly exuded that evil presence. Yeah, so it wasn't that I was sort of not allowed to find horror comics, but I don't think they were really readily around in Australia as like they were in the US.
Do you recall what your first real introduction to horror fiction was?
Oh, definitely. So when I was doing my journalism degree, this was over 20 years ago now at uni, I took up a literary theory sort of elective course, and there was all sorts of stories in there. And I remember the first time I came across a horror piece of fiction was Edgar Allan Poe's Fall of the House of Usher. And it was just within another whole sort of big sort of textbook size selection of stories from all across the world. And I don't know what, it was just something about that story, the visuals in it, and the real creepiness to it, and the despair that really just spoke to me. And immediately I went off and wanted to source more of Poe's work, and it was all just the same gothic romance, and I just sort of absorbed it. It was just amazing to read, and I've got several collections of his, several copies of the same collections on my shelf here, and I just usually grab them out if I'm in a sort of writer's block and just read a few passages or some of his poetry, and it just turns on a switch.
That's interesting. I could definitely see the influence of Poe in your work in terms of mood and setting and sort of the visual metaphor, especially in the House of Usher with that crack in the foundation. That's such an image throughout the whole story for everything that's happening.
Yeah.
So how do you, when you have an idea for a story, one of the things that I really enjoy about your writing is you do two things in particular that I like. One is you reinvent or find new ways to look at sort of classic horror ideas, and you also have a knack for creating your own sort of horror mythologies. So when you have an idea for a story, what do you do to kind of develop that and cultivate it?
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Jim. I guess I always in the back of my mind, I want to do something different. And obviously I've read a lot of horror, and I guess when I'm thinking about a story, it's always centered around emotion and the characters, and I want to try and make the supernatural element as believable as possible within the context of the story. So I always try and make the focal point, as all good stories should, as the characters, because ultimately you can't have the horror or terror without them. So I want to make the monsters and the people that are sort of crossing paths or whatever as realistic and as fully developed as possible. So that's where I'm always going with the story. But as far as mythology goes, like take the Nocturne mythos, for example. That was simply stumbling across some Greek mythology one day about the muses, all the various muses for music and art, and that's part of Greek mythology. And I immediately just thought, oh, well, what if you had muses in hell who inspire people to commit sin and horrible deeds and then end up being damned? So I basically came up with my own pantheon of muses, and that was just fun. I guess the ideas just sort of pop into my head. Or another thing I used to do is just flick through a dictionary or something like that and stumble across a word and its definition and go, oh, that would make an interesting story. It just immediately just sets the cogs moving in the brain, and off I go. I just sort of start writing and see where it goes. Another thing I do too with any sort of long pieces is I write freehand in notebooks, mainly because I'm a pretty terrible typist, even though I was a journalist for almost 15 years. And I just find it flows more when I'm writing by hand. And then with the Nocturne, which was about a writer who ends up being inspired by these hellish muses, there was a sort of looking inward, wondering where my own ideas come from with my horror fiction, and I basically use that as a thread throughout the entire storyline of the Nocturne.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much, Greg. One last quick question before we wrap up. If somebody who hasn't read your work wanted to start, where would you point them? Which book would be the good place to begin?
Well, I guess for a novel, I guess Hollow House would probably be a good place to start. It's another sort of trope that I wanted to twist a bit. So the story sort of is more about a house that infects all the other houses around it. So the story just sort of you're inside 6 to 8 different houses and finding who all the characters are in each of those houses, and then how this creepy house sort of influences them. So if that sounds interesting, I think probably Hollow House would be a good way to go. If you like Halloween, then obviously Midnight Masquerade would be a good choice. But my very first collection, Vaudeville and Other Nightmares, which I did years ago now, would probably be another recommendation. It's a real good mix of all the different things I like to write about.
Terrific. Greg, thank you so much for joining us on Galactic Terrors. Thanks for sharing happy days with us. And good luck with everything going forward with your writing.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Jim. Really appreciate it.
All right. And many thanks to Greg for taking some time to read for us and record that Q&A. And I hope everyone enjoyed it. And definitely check out Greg's work when you have a chance. A lot of his art is online and really very entertaining and frightening at the same time. So I'm happy to introduce our next reader, Rachel A. BRUNE. Rachel is an Army veteran, former military journalist, novelist, and editor of The Creepy and Macabre. She is the founder of Crone Girls Press, an indie horror micro press specializing in anthologies. In 2022, Falstaff Books published the first book in her werewolf secret agent series, Cold Run. Later that year, she took on the position of senior editor of Falstaff's new horror imprint, Falstaff Dread. She lives with her spouse, 2 daughters, 1 reticent cat, and 2 flatulent rescue dogs. More info about Rachel A. BRUNE is available online at linktree/Rachel A. BRUNE. And let's welcome Rachel.
everyone. Thanks for joining. I'll be reading a selection from a short piece of mine called And Out Come the Wolves. It's a post-apocalyptic piece, and a squad of protectors who are kind of the security forces for one of the compounds in this post-apocalypse are out patrolling the area. The day was so hot and humid, we were all dripping before we left the outwall. The tall green walls of the forest surrounding it made it worse, concentrating the sun and beaming its rays down on us, coaxing the moisture from the dirt and the leaves. It had rained in the night, and as we walked, we brushed against the leftover drops. By the time we made it a click out, we were thoroughly drenched. Ladyfingers held up a hand, calling a halt, just as I walked through a particularly wet and sticky cobweb. I flailed at my face and walked straight into a low-hanging branch that sent droplets down my neck and back. I cussed silently to myself, then heard what she had called the halt for. Gunfire. The shots came from the northwest, away from the gate. As the team took up a protective position around us, I knelt near Ladyfinger so that we could talk without anything nearby overhearing. One team, maybe two, engaging. Ladyfingers nodded in the opposite direction. Big Mike and Ness are patrolling south. We're closest. I knew what she was saying. If anyone was going to respond, it would have to be us. Rules of engagement called for us to come to the aid of the other squad, but depending on the size of the nest they'd run into, survival would probably mean booking it in the opposite direction, back to the gate. More shots. They weren't too far away, but not so close that we couldn't make a tactical withdrawal. There's a short moment of silence, and then another flurry of gunfire. This time a series of rounds that went on, one set of weapons engaging, then another. Disciplined shooting, but with a rapid-fire cadence to it. Let's go. I nodded in the direction of the sound of the fire. They were still in the fight. If the firing stops, we stop. Ladyfingers nodded, understanding, then signaled for her team to get moving. The firefight kept up, growing in intensity as we stalked through the woods. We moved quickly, worrying less than usual about making a sound. All the noise was coming from ahead of us. Sweating, slipping in the damp mud and leaves, we finally reached the edge of where the crack and thunder of the weapons hurt the eardrums. Halfway up a washout, a pack of chittering, slavering creatures leapt and bounded, trying to reach what was left of a team of protectors. The cliffside surrounding the washout on three sides was steep enough that the furred biodapts were having trouble reaching the protectors, but not so steep that they wouldn't eventually succeed. Two of the team had reached the top. One, a woman bleeding profusely from the scalp, tried to help a fellow teammate up the loose, sandy hill, while the other, a man whose dark skin was slashed with a number of deep red cuts, laid down covering fire. At the bottom of the hill, almost completely covered by the swarming pack, I caught a glimpse of bloody canvas, a scrap of leather, the end of a barrel on a tripod. A thick, furred mass scurried and trampled in waves, feeding on the remains of the two protectors who hadn't made it to safety. There was no time to find the best position for an attack. Taking up a prone position at the edge of the wood, we began firing down at the biodaps. The shots barely got their attention. As one would fall, another would take its place. "Holy shit, Sarge!" Ladyfingers yelled, firing again into the pack. "They're healing faster than we can kill them." "They're not healing," I yelled back, then paused, sighting and shooting two more. They jerked, flipped, and disappeared under their fellows. "There's just too many of them." Finally, our shots caught their attention. One by one, the creatures paused to look up at us. They were quadrupeds with thick fur and sharp teeth and claws that curved around with wicked barbs at the end. They looked almost like beavers or groundhogs or raccoons, but their face had been morphed into nightmares. Instead, looking up, reflected up at us from what seemed like 1,000 pair of eyes, came the craving, murderous drive to kill and eat that drove the biodapts. "Christ, Sarge, you think they'll..." I knew what Ladyfingers was going to say and cursed her for putting the words into the universe, because as soon as she said it, the biodaps abandoned their attempts to get at us by scaling the cliff. Instead, the pack began sniffing around, shuffling around the terrain, flowing up the sides, getting closer to find where the terrain sloped down, providing them access to climb the ridge and come after us. Shift fire, you bastards!" Ladyfingers screamed, and the team turned as one to face the new incoming threat. "Take cover! Shoot the little furry assholes!" It struck us as funny, and we erupted in laughter, even as panic and fear lent our firing a hard, ragged edge. And then things went from bad to worse. The Biodaps found the path, and the swarm regained its footing, tumbling and growling and glistening with blood and saliva. If I'd had any doubts about their intelligence, they were now dispelled. The Biodaps moved as if controlled by one mind, flowing up the slope towards us, darting from tree to tree, maintaining cover. The largest Biodaps finally made it to our line, darting around the trees and flanking us against the cliffside. We were at the top of the draw, forming a protective semicircle around the wounded members of the other squad, firing desperately. My bolt clicked to the rear. I was empty. Reaching for another magazine, I came up short. Trying not to panic, I patted down every single pouch and pocket I had, but in the maelstrom, I had fired until empty like a rookie dumbass. Shit. Ladyfingers tossed me a magazine and kept firing. A trio of Biodaps rushed the first of us, a kid whose real name I couldn't remember, but who everyone called Smokes. He was empty too, but kept pulling at the trigger, screaming as creatures swarmed over him. A spray of bright red, and his scream cut off. Time slowed. I turned, firing, moving without thinking, without being consciously aware of what I was doing. Something burned my left leg. Something punctured the skin in my lower back, tearing flesh until I grabbed it, pulled it from me, and stomped as the blood flowed from the wound. The swarm was all around us now. I pulled my knife and said a brief prayer to a goddess I'd stopped believing in, and hacked and slashed and shot long after the blade went slick in my hand. The unearthly howl penetrated even the ringing in my ears. The Biodaps froze as one, the swarm momentarily still. By now their ranks had been decimated, but a good 20 or 30 of the little bastards were still on us. Taking advantage of the distraction, I slashed and kicked at the Biodap at my feet, almost losing my knife in the thick fur. The howling came again, and this time the first voice was joined by a feral chorus. The sound reverberated through the woods. The firing had stopped. We had all run out of rounds. A huge gray blur knocked the wind from me, pushing me to the ground as it ran past and grabbed the Biodap by the throat. With a quick shake, the Biodap's neck broke and the monstrous gray creature was on to the next. I sat in disbelief, knife still clenched in my hand, dripping blood, coated in it. The first gray wolf was joined by a wave of 10 more, massive beasts with thick fur that caught the sunlight as it dappled through the trees, turning red at the tips in the slaughter. They bit and howled and snarled, and by the time I thought to bring up my knife to defend against them, they had laid waste to the entire pack of Biodaps. A groan at my side distracted me. Ladyfingers was half sitting, half laying, propped up against the body of one of the protectors we'd come to support. The man with the deep scores on his body was beyond aid, limbs flopping uselessly. Ladyfingers coughed and groaned again. Most of what should have been inside her torso lay strewn against the leaves. A Biodap that had been feasting on her guts had been tossed to the side by the wolves' onslaught. That's what they were. Wolves. True wolves. As the pack finished their slaughter, sniffing here and there to make sure that no Biodap stirred further, the biggest wolf alerted. Tail and ears up, she sniffed the air. Her gaze slid over to me, and I gripped the knife tighter. She walked to me, slowly, as if giving me time to decide what to do. There was no fear in her. As she came closer, I recognized her. We had seen her in the pack at the river. She had been the lead wolf there, the white ears and tail amid the otherwise gray fur, setting her apart. Damn, Sarge. She's beautiful. Ladyfingers reached out to the wolf, who bowed her head. Then, with a rasping gargle, my protector dropped her arm. I waited to hear her next breath, but it never came. I tried to get to my feet and fell to one knee. The wolves didn't react, just watched me. I breathed slowly, feeling every ache and cut and slash now that the fight was over. My hands shook and I almost dropped the knife. Get a grip. Pulling myself together, I forced myself to my feet. The cut on my leg was still bleeding, but it wouldn't kill me before I got back to the wall. That is, if the wolves let me pass. Figuring they would either kill me or let me by, but there wasn't much I could do about it either way, I started moving. Stumbling at first, I gathered up the identification tags from each of the fallen, tucking them safely in one of my empty magazine pouches. I slipped Lady Finger's wedding ring from her left hand and clipped that to one of the carabiners on my kit to give to her wife if I ever made it back to the compound. Groaning, I slung every rifle I could recover over my back, hefting 2 or 3 before I decided that was enough. I picked up the M249, which still had a few more rounds in the belt. The previous gunner's figure slid to the ground one by one. The rest of the previous gunner was nowhere to be seen. So that is, like I said, that's a short selection. Hope I didn't reveal any spoilers, but from And Out Come the Woods and Out Come the Wolves in my short fiction collection, Side Roads.
Ooh, I love the fingers dribble down and the guy's, he's gone. Wow. Oh, that was intense, Rachel. Yeah. Okay, so speaking of our horror writer veterans, I firmly believe that it would be hard to write that without some military background. What do you think?
So I spent a lot of time when we would go to the range, especially if I was running a range. I would spend a lot of time watching people not hit targets.
Okay.
So the whole there's a giant mass and you can't not help but hit them. Yeah, that came from there.
Okay. Biodapps. Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
creepy. That's always, I mean, one of my pet peeves in a lot of, I guess it's kind of dying down now as the zombie genre evolves, but that in shows like The Walking Dead, these people were so accurate when they had to hit zombies in the head. They're
Right.
running in vehicles and, one
Yes.
shot right in the forehead kind of thing.
In a wagon. Yeah. Not to mention the adrenaline effect. Hello, where your hands go, "Bleh." Yeah.
So would you say that was pretty inaccurate, Rachel, or that trope?
The trope and the shooting.
Yeah.
Cool.
But it's fun to watch. So, what can I say?
Yeah, they do other things well in the show. So, yeah, that's reasonable. Cool.
So I guess, Werewolf Werewolf Secret Agent, struck a chord, and we already have a question.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and this is from Nicholas. Are your werewolf spies inspired in any way by your tooting puppers? And before you answer that, I want to say that I share your pain. I have a Boston Terrier. And, she knows, their reputation often precedes them as one of the most flatulent breeds.
So I have we have a Basset Hound, and then we have another dog that's a mixed breed. And the dog, the Basset's not too bad unless he gets into something he's not supposed to. But my mixed breed dog can clear the entire house. The entire house. It is. I had a friend who came over. She was sitting there. She was petting her. She's like, "Oh, Brand, you're such a great dog." And all of a sudden, she's like, "Oh my God, what is that?" She got up. She had to leave the room.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Way to clear the room. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that they inspired the Werewolf Secret Agent. They're not very stealthy, and Captain, if you offered him a hamburger, Captain's the Basset Hound, he would immediately change sides, so he would not be very effective.
Well, it's good to know where people where the loyalties can be derived. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to think that being prone to tooting would be a disadvantage for spies anyway.
I'm looking for the admissions criteria, and see. I'll have to see if that's on there. Yeah,
Right.
That's cool. Yeah, huh? No, and the this is cool. Yep. This is Cold Run. This is This is the really cool.
I didn't even pay Carol to
No, you don't owe me anything for that. No, it's cool. No, it's a really fun book, and I'm looking forward to more in the series. So that'll be very cool. Yeah. So we'll talk more about that at the end.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit too about your work with Falstaff Dredge. So you're editing. Tell us a little bit about what your editorial process is like, or how doing work as an editor maybe influences your work as a writer.
So that came about. I had a couple of anthologies under my belt, and
with Chrome Girls
with
Press.
Girls
Yeah.
Press, yep. And I was talking with John Hartness, who is the publisher, the CEO and publisher at Falstaff. He had picked up my series, and I had been talking about, I was like, I would really like to do longer fiction, but I didn't feel that Crone Girls was set up to really support authors in the way that Falstaff is, at least for longer fiction. And so he said, well, would you like to come work for me and be the editor? And I said, why, yes, John, I would. And that's kind of how that happened. For the most part, so we just started. I'm just finishing up going through the slush pile from AuthorCon, and then we took pictures at pitches at StokerCon over the summer. And I'll read the pitch, I'll read the synopsis, and then I'll dive into the book. And if I'm still reading at the end of the first 3 chapters that the author has sent, and I feel like I can't stop, I'll go ahead and I'll request the full. And that's about as far as I've gone, except I have 2. We've got 2. One that we've signed a little while ago with an author that already works with Falstaff, because they already published her, so it was kind of easy to bring some of the authors over. And then the other one, I don't want to say too much because we're in the midst of signing the contract.
Yes.
So we're in the midst.
Yeah.
But it's very exciting, and I'm really pumped for some of the stories that we're going to have available.
Oh, cool.
And do you find it hard to change hats from editor to writer and back and forth?
I shouldn't, but I do. Editing. So I firmly believe that being an editor has helped to make me a better writer, because I have to learn you really have to learn what are the components of a good story. And then you get a chance to see, is something working? And then you have to try to have a conversation with the author about, this isn't working, and this is the context of where it's not working. You don't want to solve the problem for them because it's the author's voice, but you do want to be able to have a conversation with them about what exactly is not working and be specific about it. Because if you're in a writer's group, sometimes you can be like, oh, I liked this, or, I didn't really feel this. But as an editor, you have to be working with that writer to help them with a level of specificity that will be useful when they're taking that edit and going back to work on their manuscript. So I definitely feel that learning how to do that has made me a better writer, or maybe a more effective writer.
Yeah. And we, Jim, Rachel, and I met back in about 2015-ish with Writer Punk Press, which was the charity press that, all told, we put out 6 anthologies of stuff. But we were both working as editors there, and that's where I learned that she has a very similar kind of thought process, because you have to be kind and work with authors in a respectful way. I don't like harsh words, as an editor to an author, because, you still want to keep working and you want the person to understand what you're saying. So, I have to say, both Rachel and Jim, you are both people that feel the same way, having seen your editorial input. And I think that makes a huge difference. And the respect is very important. Does that strike a chord, Rachel? Does that make sense?
Very much so. Very much so. To me, writing and editing and all of these things, publishing, we're professionals, right? We're working together, we're colleagues. And even if we're just colleagues for one project, that doesn't mean that we might not ever work together again. And so for me, I'm trying to work with somebody in such a way that they're going to get some good value out of what I have to say. For me as a writer, switching hats, some of the best editorial comments, suggestions, edits that I've gotten have been things that have helped me grow and have helped me define my own voice and have left room for me to solve my own problems. And so that's what I try to also do. And Carol, like you said, I don't understand where is the room for being harsh in that? I don't I don't think so. I mean, you and I, we've worked together for a little while, so I'll probably, sometimes I'll just be like, hey, Carol, this needs to be fixed. And you'll be like, yes,
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
Which it might be a little bit more blunt than if it's somebody that I'm working with for the first time or a brand new author. But I mean, the harshness, no, there's no room for that. It's hard. Leave the horror for the page.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. You don't want to crush people's dreams or aspirations if they're newer writers, and even established writers, I think, don't. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. It's just you want it to always be a professional, constructive engagement when you're editing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of what you were saying really resonated for me, because that's sort of the approach I take when editing fiction. Is it's slipping inside the author's head and seeing where maybe you can tease out more of their voice, or more of what, picking up on interesting threads that maybe that are present in the story but a little underdeveloped, that kind of thing. But as you said, you don't want to tell them what to do. You just want to sort of put up a little like flag. Hey, here's something you might want to do a little more with, or think about this in a different way, and see what they come back with.
Yeah, and when I read this, I thought that is that may or may not be what you intended, but that's how it came across. Yeah, that's really cool. So, and with Crone Girls Press, now Rachel is a publisher, and I am a very minor character with Crone Girls Press. We'll just say that at the beginning, so it doesn't sound like I'm kissing butt too much here. But I'm associate publisher. But that means that she and I talk, and she does all the rest of the work. It's a great deal for me. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's not how it works at all. Usually what will happen is I'll call Carol up and be like, Carol, what am I doing with my life? And she's like, it's okay. Look at the spreadsheet. Look at the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet will tell all. And she's right. The spreadsheet does tell all.
Yeah. Okay, I want to share this one real quick. You all have heard us talk about this. We edited this together. A Woman Unbecoming. We put this together in 2 months. And for 2 of those weeks, speaking of being a military person, Rachel was working out in the middle of nowhere where there was no internet connection while we were co-editing this anthology as part of her military ongoing support stuff. So, nothing like editing, by text message on a phone. It was cool. Yeah, but we got it done.
There was one night that I went down to it was at Camp Shelby, Mississippi, which was the middle of summer. I was dying, and I got all of the edits that I had done and was ready to send out to the authors. And I went and I sat outside the USA because it was like 10 o'clock at night and the place was closed, but they still had Wi-Fi. So I stole some Wi-Fi and I'm sitting there. I'm like, all right, I'm going to send this, but you probably won't hear from me for another week because I'm in the middle of nowhere. Adventures in editing.
Way to get things done, though.
Oh, but man, we had. If you had, I mean, I don't want to toot our own horn, but I will, because the authors that are in that anthology, in all of the anthologies, but I was particularly proud of that one because we just had some just fantastic authors who. It's a charity anthology. We weren't able to pay them, so they contributed the gift of their creative work. And I'm really grateful to Carol, and I'm really grateful to the authors because they made that anthology happen.
And we asked Jim, but unfortunately he was facing another deadline and was not able to put a story in for us, but that would have been cool too. Yeah, it's neat.
Deadline.
Often unable to do quick turnarounds.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Well, either you can or you can't. It all depends. Yeah. So that's pretty neat. I don't know. So what do you think? Why don't we ask Rebecca to come back on and we'll talk about what everybody has coming up, because this is a fun group here.
There we go.
And hi, hey there. I don't know if Greg is still awake in the chat, but that was really fun to hear his words and hear your interview with him as well.
Yeah, it was.
That's neat. Yeah,
I think. I'm not sure if Greg is still hanging out in the chat. I'm not sure what time it is where he is right now. I know
it's dark 30 probably. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. It gets so difficult, and then you throw in daylight savings time.
Yes, but
all of a sudden it's like everybody in other countries that you typically meet with is like, oh, now we got to figure this one out, and never easy.
Yeah. And Rebecca, we're just doing upstate and downstate in New York, so that's enough. That's enough fun. Yeah. So what's going on with everybody? I love hearing the words that you've shared with us so far, but what's coming up for you? Do you have some projects or things that you're working on? Rebecca, you hinted a little bit about the one that was coming with the pink letters,
Yes.
Self-Made Monsters. Can you tell us a little bit about this? It's a cool cover.
So, Rebecca, I think that you are muted.
My bad.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Here I am. Self-Made Monsters is a hybrid collection. So it is mostly fiction, but there's some poetry in there too.
Mhm.
So it is feminist horror, and it is split into 2 sections. And The Dead, the Damned, the Dreaming is the first section, and the second section is the Vexed, the Vicious, the Vengeful. So there are some women doing some stuff in that one. I don't want to give too much of it away.
Okay. Cool. Well, you hooked me already. Yeah.
Thanks.
So
I'm just impressed that you can describe a horror book like that, and people, women doing some stuff, and it's like, yeah, and that's a horror book.
That's a thing. Yeah. And then my mind goes, whoa. Yeah. That's terrific. Oh, that's exciting. And it's coming in 2024 sometime?
That one is coming out in October of 2024.
Okay.
And I have another project that I cannot announce here because it is getting announced on a podcast called Tell the Damn Story.
Oh,
yes.
So I'll have news coming out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's from Chris Ryan, another one of our HWA New York chapter members.
Yep. Chris Ryan and Alex Simmons.
And Alex Simmons, right? Chris and Alex
Yes.
Simmons do Tell the Damn Story. That's a terrific podcast that you should check out.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, well, we'll have to wait and find out about that one. So, yeah.
Do you know when that episode of the podcast will be airing?
I think it's before the end of the month.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Excellent. We'll keep our eyes peeled for that. That'll be terrific. Yeah, great. Well, congratulations on all that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Rachel, how about you? What's going on now that you're settled in your new location and you're getting your feet back under you? What's coming up for you?
So the second book in the werewolf series is with Falstaff, and should be hearing about the release date at some point in the near future.
Cool.
And then I'm working on the third book. We also have a really fun slate for Crone Girls Press this coming year. We've got 2 short, we call them our mini anthologies. So Midnight Bites, it's a series where we have 3 themed stories of novelette or novella length. We've got one coming up in February and then one in July. The first one's going to be a carnival theme, and the second one is an apocalypse theme, because as you can tell, I love me a good apocalypse. And then Carol and I, we haven't announced it yet officially, but we are working together to put together a project for our full-length anthology for 2024. Yes, we're going to be editing together again, and I'm so excited about it.
Yes, I can't wait to find out where you're going, where there's no internet this time. Yeah, no, don't do that. Do not do that. And I'm just going to jump and follow that because we just came out with Tangle and Fen, an anthology of dark fiction, and My Story Susurrations is in there. And Rachel is the editor of this one. I just have a story in it is all. But I'm just going to hint it's got lovely mealworms in it, and it also has some refrigerator magnet poetry, like the kind that you get from John Lawson and Raw Dog Screaming Press.
Nice.
So yeah.
I love that poetry kit. I love it so much. I love it. Okay, I'm just gonna gush. It is so much fun. And if you don't have the magnetic poetry from Raw Dog Screaming Press, go and buy it because it's super fun and they have a lot of awesome vocabulary. It's so gross.
Yes, it's wonderful. Yeah. Jim, how about you? What do you have coming up?
Well, my big news is still my new Cosmic Horror collection, A Bright and Beautiful Eternal World, which is coming out now, more or less. I think the limited hardcovers are starting to hopefully come off press, and next month the paperback will be available. And very excited about that, coming out from Weird House Press.
And I just need to show that gorgeous cover again because that's freaking awesome. It's just freaking awesome. Bright, beautiful, eternal world.
Yeah,
Yes.
and the same illustrator did about 10 or 12 illustrations in the book, so it's really
yeah.
quite a nice package. And the fiction's not bad either.
That writer guy, yeah.
No,
that's
but
exciting.
I just want to now, Rachel, this story you read was from a piece in Side Roads.
Yes,
Great.
it's called "And Out Come the Wolves," and it's the last story in that collection.
Awesome.
Cool.
I love short stories. They are okay. I love novels, but short stories that's how I got into horror fiction in the first place. And so I just have a special place in my heart for horror poetry and horror short stories I love them so much. I'll gush about them all day.
Yeah,
they're ultimately consumable. Yeah.
That was my my gateway to horror. It's actually to most fiction was short stories. I remember reading a ton of science fiction anthologies, and then horror, getting into Stephen King, Clive Barker's collections and things. So I'm right there with you. I love the short fiction.
Mm-hmm. And Rebecca does all those things as well. This is what a cool crowd. Yeah. This is neat.
Also, and my gateway, I think, to spooky stuff. Do y'all remember those old Alfred Hitchcock collections of like ghost stories? And they had the old book smell.
Yes.
Back in the day when you were going to the library and there was an actual card catalog. And I remember being a kid and searching ghosts as my like sort of keyword for the card catalog and like seeing what I could find.
Yeah.
I've actually got a couple of those, not quite within arm's reach, but nearby.
Yes, they're up in that palm tree behind you. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm in my treehouse.
Well, there's some other things that are happening soon, and I'm just putting in the chat. But for those who are in the New York City and Philadelphia area, the PhilCon convention is this weekend. It's in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. HWA New York members are going to have a table in the dealer room, and people can find out more at philcon.org. I am sorry to say, you may have noticed I'm a little loopy tonight, and I have been consuming mass quantities of cough drops because I have a virus and I'm sick, so I am not able to go. So I'm sorry to miss everybody at PhilCon, but I know y'all are going to have a great time and a great convention. So everybody take a look for that coming up.
Yeah.
And
Carol, I think you have something else coming up too. We kind of inadvertently previewed it at the start.
Yes, we did. And we have there's a really fun event going on all day long from Strong Women, Strange Worlds, and that's another reading series that I take part in. You can't read all these things, but December 2nd, there's a holiday extravaganza from Strong Women, Strange Worlds. And there's stuff all day. I'm just putting a little bit of the information in the chat there. I'm doing the thing from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, speed data book. So I get 2 minutes to tell everybody about the story that I'm presenting with sock puppets or pictures or songs or whatever I want, interpretive dance, whatever you want to do. I get so there'll be a series of us, and then people can ask questions, and it's a really fun event. It goes on all day long. It's online. People can just stop in and out and take a visit. But I encourage y'all to join in because those are fun. I love reading series. Clearly I do because I spend so much time with you guys. So yeah.
Yes.
And thank you for that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for joining us, both of you. Yeah. So
and I
very
think
cool.
Rachel, I just have a question about your Werewolf Secret Agent series. Is that intended as sort of an open-ended ongoing book series, or do you plan it as like a trilogy?
There's 5 books planned.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yep. The 4th book is written. The 3rd one, the one that I'm writing now, is being expanded from what was originally a novella. And the only reason it was a novella was because I wrote the beginning and the ending and got lazy about the middle. So I'm now actually going back to write the way I should have in the first place. And then the 5th book, the outline for the 5th book that I have wraps it up.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. Right. Well, neat. Well,
Rebecca,
this was
any upcoming appearances?
Do I have any? I'm going to be on the Necronomicon podcast. Necronoma.com podcast with James Chambers and Don Guillory. And it's not an appearance, but I am going to AuthorCon in April. So I just hope to hang out with people there. Come find me.
Yes. Now, I just
I'll
have
be
to
there.
back up for a second and ask you about the podcast, Necronomicon.com podcast. With which James is it? Because I think you said Chambers, and I don't.
Did I say Chambers? I meant Sabata.
Am I supposed to be
I'm
on?
sorry.
No.
Sorry, James Sabata.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I do that too. Oh, my memory for names, particularly tonight when I don't feel good. Ooh, yeah.
No, the thing, it's one of those things where you have that moment of, oh crap, did I forget about something I said yesterday?
Am I supposed to run a podcast that no one?
Yeah, it starts in 5 minutes. Jim, you're ready, right? Yeah.
What am I supposed to do that? Oh, okay.
You can handle it.
But no, that's great. I mean, James Sabata also does this cool event that has the last couple of years has been preceding StokerCon, an evening of spirited giving. And it was at the Stanley Hotel the night before the Denver StokerCon, and I think I don't remember the location, but there was one before Pittsburgh, and I think there's going to be one before San Diego too.
There is one planned for San Diego.
Yeah. So very cool stuff. And I think before we wrap up, I just want to give everyone another quick look at Greg's book cover for Midnight Masquerade. A piece of the macabre. You can trust Lee Murray on that. I think that's Greg's art on the cover. So it's pretty
wonderfully creepy. Yeah.
It's creepy.
I wore red just to match that. Yeah. Cool. And we have one more exciting thing to share coming up in December on the 14th. We have 3 authors coming in. We have Joanne McLaughlin, who's written vampire novels and has a new mystery book out, which will be premiere. There's a book launch for it at PhilCon. And Charles E. Gannon, Chuck Gannon, has a whole series of fabulous sci-fi things with some dark stuff in it. And we also have a special discussion with science fiction and horror editor Ellen Datlow. So she's going to be on the show as well. And she's one of our HWA New York members. So we have fun chatting with Ellen about horror stuff every month in our meetings. So that's cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So next month, we're going to be putting a little more of the Galactic Terrors. What's coming on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of fun. You know, we love horror, but we love all the speculative fiction branches. So it's all very fun.
And if you wanted to keep up on all of those cool things, you can join our newsletter.
Our spam-free newsletter. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. And thank you to everybody who's joined us live and has made comments and questions and stuff in the audience. And I appreciate all the well wishes. I'm going to probably go to sleep pretty soon and sleep a lot tomorrow. So, yeah. Oh, well. Yeah.
Rebecca, Rachel, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your stories with us. It was great. Big shout out to Greg too for his reading and his Q&A. And Carol, I hope you feel better soon.
Thank you. Just in time for Turkey Day, probably. Yeah. So that'll be good. So everybody enjoy, and I hope that if everybody does things right, we'll have a really good Turkey Day, and everything will be fine. It'll just be fine. Yeah.
I mean, but now if Thanksgiving doesn't look like that, I'm going to be disappointed.
Well, I could come blow your house up if you want. I mean, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you for joining us, everyone.
Great. Thank you. And thank you to all of you in the audience for joining us and for your great questions for the authors.
Yeah, and if you two could hang on for a second when the show's over, we'd love to chat with you for another minute. Thanks.
All right. Hopefully we'll see you all next month.